But we live in a world, in the real world, Jake, that is governed by strength, that is governed by force, that is governed by power. These are the iron laws of the world that have existed since the beginning of time.
But in terms of
To a simple question from CNN about who is actually running Venezuela, Stephen Miller replied with a manifesto. The world is governed by force and power. Force, power, strength. Miller says that these are the iron laws of the world. This is the most honest translation of Trumpism. No room for diplomacy. No room for law. The only rule that counts is who has the biggest stick. In that same interview, he doesn't even rule out military action to take Greenland. His logic: no one has the guts to fight the United States of America.
The United States should have Greenland as part of the United States. There's no need to even think or talk about this in the context that you're asking of a military operation. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
One last question, Stephen.
Stephen Miller, 40 years old. He's the key to understanding Trumpism. He isn't just a quoter, he's an operative ideologue. He takes a messy culture war and translates it into formulas, legal frameworks, and executive orders. In the first term, he was the architect of immigration policy. Today, he's at the top of the staff, the dead corner of the decision-making process. He embodies the soul of the MAGA movement. Politics as permanent conflict between friend and enemy. Power is a test of strength, never a negotiation. Born in liberal Santa Monica, California, Miller built his identity by opposition. Already in high school, he turned local disputes into national cases, using conservative media as his megaphone. There is a video circulating online. Miller takes the stage during his high school election campaign. He complains about having to pick up his own trash. He says it's not his job. There are janitors paid to do it. You can hear he's trying to be ironic. But this attitude returns later. Like in an old Vice documentary, filmed when he was just a kid on a bus with his classmates. He seems to be joking around.
But as for Saddam Hussein and his henchmen, I think the ideal solution would be to cut off their fingers. I don't think it's necessary to kill them entirely. We're not a barbaric people. We respect life. Therefore, torture is the way to go. Because torture people can live. Torture is a celebration of life and human dignity. We need to remember that as we enter these very dark and dangerous times in the next century. And I only hope that many of my peers and people who will be leading this country will appreciate the value and respect that torture shows towards other
Talking
cultures.
about how to treat enemies, in this case Saddam Hussein, he argues that killing them is wrong, because Americans respect life. We aren't barbarians. So what is the moral solution? Cut off their fingers. Miller calls torture a celebration of life and human dignity. Because if you torture, you don't kill. Therefore, you're good. He's joking this time too. But as an Italian saying goes, in every joke there is half a truth. After a degree in political science, he goes straight to Washington. There, he learns to build the narrative frames that hold identity and conflict together. Landing in the Senate alongside Jeff Sessions, a Republican hawk, immigration becomes his natural turf. Not just a technical dossier, but a keystone to define the nation, belonging, and power. Then, with Trump, he finds the political vehicle he was waiting for. He arrives as a speechwriter, translating the boss's instincts into the grammar of government. On January 20th, 2017, the grammar was complete. While other inaugural addresses in history spoke of hope and unity, Miller's text painted a hellscape.
And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
American Carnage. It's not just dark rhetoric, it is a strategic operation. Miller knows one fundamental thing. If you convince people they are living in a hell of tombstones and crime, then democratic rules become luxury you can no longer afford. In a normal world, you need a president who mediates and respects the law. But in the apocalyptic landscape painted by Miller, you don't need a politician. You need a sheriff, a strongman. Here is the trick. Miller builds and writes a landscape of permanent emergency to justify methods of power that would be unacceptable in normal times. It's not just cynicism or political pessimism. It is an authorization for the use of force. The perfect theater for this clash is the border. For Miller, it's not a geographical line. It is the stage where the state proves it exists. The chaos created by the Muslim ban in 2017 wasn't a miscalculation. It was a stress test. Miller wanted to see what happened when the president's order crashed into the law. And when federal judges blocked the decree, he went on television, not to apologize, but to warn the court. The powers of the president will not be questioned. That is the tone. He isn't speaking as a public servant, he's speaking as the emissary of a king. For Miller, if the president decides there is an emergency, the judiciary becomes irrelevant. Who is in charge? Not the one who interprets the law, but the one who has the force to protect the country. This is where Trumpism stops being conservative politics and becomes something else. It becomes a direct challenge to the separation of powers.
Clouds of smoke and clashes with police. Outside the United States Capitol, pro-Trump rioters attempted a second time to seize the seat of government, scaling the building and breaking through doors.
January 6, 2021. Capitol Hill. Miller wasn't on the sidelines. He was inside the operational perimeter. The committee report places him right inside the Oval Office on the morning of the assault. Politically, he always ridden the big lie of election fraud. He translated the raw narrative into procedural hypotheses, like the alternate electors. Parallel delegates meant to overturn the results for Trump. In short, not a coup in the streets, but a procedural coup. Miller seems perfectly aligned with Trump's subversive instinct, his refusal to accept defeat. And he builds a procedure on top of it that sounds almost constitutional. It is his method pushed to the limit. If democracy doesn't give the desired result, you bend the procedure until it does. While the administration collapsed and loyalists fled to sign million-dollar book deals or launder their reputations, Miller said nothing. He is the only member of the original 2016 political staff who never wrote a tell-all book. He never sought the spotlight for himself. He never betrayed. Trump, obsessed with loyalty, noted the exception. That's why his return isn't a simple appointment. It's a total delegation of power. Back in power, his turf remains immigration, but elevated to a total government program. In the spring of 2025, he set a new operational target, 3,000 arrests a day. A quantum leap compared to 2024, when ICE recorded about 170,000 administrative arrests per year. Miller is aiming for a scale of over 1 million arrests annually. It's not just a change in scale, it is a change in the nature of ICE. This war machine requires troops that immigration police simply don't have. So Miller has activated force multipliers, agreements that turn local county police into de facto federal agents, and, in extreme cases, the National Guard. This generates unprecedented institutional friction. Blue states suing the federal government, sheriffs refusing to cooperate, judges blocking flights. Miller seeks this conflict. For him, the clash with sanctuary cities is the necessary stage to demonstrate who is really in charge. Every arrest made in a hostile city is not just policing, it is an act of dominion over rebellious territory. Sovereignty, to exist, must be visible, and if necessary, violent. In the second term, Miller doesn't stop at the border. His footprint is visible on foreign policy, where he applies the exact same logic. Force, not mediation. On Greenland, it wasn't a joke. He pushes for territorial acquisition as a strategic option. On Venezuela, the attitude is raw power. On Ukraine and Europe, the posture is similar. Allies must obey or pay. There is no space for an equal partnership.
From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
For Miller, diplomacy as a negotiation between equals does not exist. There is only imposition or surrender. This isn't simple realpolitik. It is a vision of the world where power is the only reality that counts. Miller's entire operating system is built on two levers: permanent emergency and the executive as absolute sovereign. Inside this frame, democracy isn't a system of checks and balances. It is a vehicle. If procedures slow you down, you bypass them. If constraints get in the way, they become technicalities to be ignored. Miller's world is binary: strength or weakness, friend or enemy. There are no gray zones. There's only the balance of power. And with Miller at the top, that logic is the program.